Cadel Evans, 2011, 1 minute 34 seconds. The 2011 Tour de France saw Cadel Evans become the first Australian to win the coveted maillot jaune, overtaking Andy Schleck on the penultimate day's time trial in Grenoble. Evans relied upon a cool head and a do-or-die attitude to beat Leopard Trek's pairing of Frank and Andy Schleck, staying with the brothers in the mountains and using the descents and time trial stages to extract an advantage. Andy Schleck, 2010, 1 minute 22 seconds. Schleck became retroactive champion when Alberto Contador's 2010 victory was erased after failing a drug test. There was much animosity between the two after a flashpoint on stage 15 when Contador launched an attack as Schleck dropped his chain on a climb. Contador went on to take 39 seconds off Schleck at the finish line and the overall lead in the GC. Despite losing out at the time, Schleck was awarded the yellow jersey when the Spaniard tested positive for clenbuterol. Looking comfortable on the climbs and winning 2 stages in the mountains, Schleck also won the white jersey for the best young rider that year. Carlos Sastre, 2008, 58 seconds. During a Tour de France which saw the yellow jersey fall on the shoulders of 7 different riders, it was Spain's Carlos Sastre who wrestled control of the general classification with a fine display of climbing. Sastre was 49 seconds in arrears at the start of stage 17, but after several days in the mountains, a strong combined effort from Team CSC Saxo Bank allowed them to deliver Sastre to the foot of Alpe d'Huez in prime position. He attacked early on the climb and showed a clean pair of heels to his rivals. He eventually won the stage by 2 minutes and 3 seconds and held his nerve and position through the final stages to take the victory. Jacques Anquetil, 1964, 55 seconds. Racing for Saint-Raphael-Gitane, Anquetil's 5th Tour de France victory was hard-earned, fighting the eternal second, Lemond and Poulidor, all the way to the final stage into Paris. While Poulidor was superior in the mountains, Anquetil's ability in the time trials proved to be the difference in the end, turning a slender 14-second lead into 55 in the final individual time trial. Bernard Thévenet, 1977, 48 seconds. Bernard Thévenet won his 2nd Tour de France in 3 years, seeing off some formidable opponents such as Eddy Merckx, Joop Zoetemelk, and the man he finished just in front of, Henny Kuiper. Once again, it was in the time trials that Thévenet edged clear of the pack. Holding just an 8-second lead going into stage 20, he put in a masterful display on the 50km course around Dijon to win the time trial and stretch his lead in the GC to 35 seconds. From there, he managed to keep Kuiper at bay all the way to Paris. Stephen Roche, 1987, 40 seconds. The Tour of 1987 was a back-and-forth affair which saw the lead change 8 times during the race. Spaniard Pedro Delgado took over the yellow jersey when the race entered the Alps. From there, he did all he could to open up a sizable time advantage to take into the individual time trial, but Roche, despite not being the best climber, rode hard to maintain a bridgeable gap. He famously exerted himself so much on the stage 21 ascent of La Plagne that he required oxygen from an ambulance shortly after crossing the finish line. He managed to recover to finish 2nd in the stage 24 time trial, 61 seconds ahead of Delgado, and a performance which saw him become the first Irishman to win the maillot jaune. As well as winning the 1987 Giro d'Italia, Roche then went on to win the World Championships later that year to complete the prestigious Triple Crown. Jan Janssen, 1968, 38 seconds. After winning the points classification in 1967, Jan Janssen came back a year later to compete for a shot at the overall. The 68 Tour was a historic moment, not only for the close GC battle, but it was also the final year in which national teams were used, replaced permanently by commercial teams the following year. Janssen didn't launch his assault on the GC until later in the race, and he was over 6 minutes down at one point. But after a win on stage 14, the Dutchman hauled himself back into contention, making back significant time in the mountain stages before winning the final 55km time trial in Paris by 54 seconds, taking the yellow jersey from Herman van Springel by 38 seconds. Oscar Pereiro, 2006, 32 seconds. Originally, this had been the closest 3-way finish in the history of the Tour de France, with only 89 seconds separating Floyd Landis, Oscar Pereiro and Andreas Kloden. When Landis tested positive for testosterone, however, Oscar Pereiro was subsequently handed the yellow jersey. His good fortune started some time before this, when in a strange twist, the 5-man break he was in on stage 14 was ignored by the peloton and finished 30 minutes ahead. Although he was pipped to the line by Jens Voigt for the stage win, the heroic efforts of that breakaway saw the Spaniard make nearly 30 minutes on the rest of the field. Although he was pipped to the line by Jens Voigt for the stage win, the heroic efforts of that breakaway saw the Spaniard overcome his time deficit on the rest of the field, turning him from gruppetto fodder to GC contender and yellow jersey holder. Alberto Contador, 2007, 23 seconds. A renowned climber, Alberto Contador was over 4 minutes down in the GC standings going into the second weekend of the 2007 Tour. By the time they'd reached the Pyrenees on stage 14, he'd clawed back to just 2 minutes 31 in arrears when he beat the yellow jersey holder Michael Rasmussen to the top of Plateau de Bay to take the stage win. Rasmussen was then removed from the race by his Rabobank team for lying about his whereabouts in the lead up to the race. This opened up an opportunity for young Contador to assume the lead in the GC along with the white jersey for Best Young Rider. The Spaniard had to defend his lead in the final time trial and did just enough to hold off strong rides from the likes of Cadel Evans and Levi Leipheimer to claim his first maillot jaune. Greg Lemond, 1989, 8 seconds. Undoubtedly one of the most exciting races in Tour de France history, there was very little to separate the hometown favourite Lemond and Fignon and eventual winner Greg Lemond. The two fought it out up until the very last stage. Fignon had built up a 50-second lead through the Alps, an advantage that many people, including the French media, thought could not be overturned in the final time trial. But Lemond had other ideas, pulling off the ride of his life to win the stage by 58 seconds from Fignon and taking the general classification by 8 seconds, making it officially the narrowest margin of victory in history.
For my money, Astana have got the coolest bus in the pro peloton. Now, it might be turquoise, it might not be called the Death Star like Sky Pro Cycling's team bus, but it does have